Everybody online with real estate seems to talk about the really good deals when they made a bunch of money. But what happens when deals go bad, when you actually lose money? I've had this happen to me, and I've recently had a couple of coaching conversations one on one with some folks who are losing money on deals. And they kind of came to me with this situation of like, what do I do now? Like, it's almost shell shocked. Like, I've been hit by this unexpected thing. In one case, a couple had a property they were going to fix up and they were long distance. And it was pretty tight budget as it was, but they had a contractor who they paid money to up front and basically just walked away with like 15 or 20 grand. And so they didn't get any work done. The contractor took the money and then they still had to fix the property up or decide what to do with it. So they were upside down. They were going to lose money on this deal. Another property was another fixer upper, and this person had a budget of about $150,000. It was a major fixer upper on an old property. And they got in to inspect the property with the city to pull permits. And the city basically said, these two things, the roof is about to fall in. It's been like patched over. It just needs to be cut off and started over because all these issues that are structural are going to be a danger. Same with the foundation. There were some issues like that. So very upside down. Instead of $150,000 remodel, it was going to be at least double that, maybe 350,000 bucks. And so it's very much a negative situation. How do you deal with either smaller versions of that or some of these really bad situations in real estate? Can you get out of them? What do you do? I want to share a couple thoughts with you on that. When things go bad, when it's hard, when you're losing, it's very natural. It's very human to freak out a little bit, maybe to have some panic. So if that happens to you, if you're in the middle of that right now, just know that's normal. But after that wave, that initial wave subsides, when it goes away, these three ideas might help you a little bit. At least they've helped me when you finally get back to your thoughts and you can figure out, how am I going to deal with this? And the first advice is to accept it. The second is to be proactive. The third is to lick your wounds and learn. Let me unpack each one of these a little bit. One of the hardest things when you have a tough deal, when things have gone bad, is it's easy to live in the past. It's easy to remember like that decision you made when, these two examples I gave you, if I would have only, done a contract or not given all the money to that contractor, then I wouldn't have lost money. It's easy to ruminate on that over and over again. That's a good lesson, right? We're going to talk about that in number 3. It's good to learn a lesson. Or on the other deal, it might be easy to say, I wish I would have inspected that more thoroughly. I wish I would have looked at the fine print. I wouldn't have missed those zoning or those issues with the roof or with the foundation. Those are true statements, but they're also in the past. And some of the wisest people that I try to study, I'm not saying I'm like this all the time, make a big emphasis on accepting what's going on. Like once that initial rush goes over, if you can get clear headed, maybe even I like to write things down. Write down on a piece of paper, what are the facts? What's happening right now? So that you can move on to this next step that I'm going to talk about, being proactive. There's a quote by Byron Katie, and I forget the name of the book she wrote, but I really enjoyed her work. I think it's called The Work. She said, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. So there's this idea that we wish things were different. We deny them. We're going to lose, but only 100% of the time. And so the first step is just accepting. It's easy to deny what happened, to rethink what happened, do it over again. We don't have any do-overs. It is what it is. Don't beat ourselves up at this point. Just accept it. That's step number 1. Step number 2, and this is the really important one, is that no matter what situation you're in, there's a whole range of events that could happen from this. Like the stimulus, the thing that happened is the reality, but there's this gap between what is right now and the way you're going to respond to it. And you have a lot of say so. You could lose a lot more money, or you could lose just a little bit of money. And depending on how you respond by being proactive. This is an idea. One of my favorite books I read early in my career was called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Probably reread that book like 6 or 7 times. And in that book, I was introduced to an idea from another author and thinker named Viktor Frankl, who lived through the Holocaust and World War II, was in a horrible situation. He was Jewish, lost his family, and he wrote a book, another amazing book, called Man's Search for Meaning. And I think it was in that book where he said, basically, your power as a human being is in the gap between what happens to you, which is kind of fate. You can't control that as much, and how you respond to it. Like your attitude and your actions you take, there's a gap there. And sometimes we kind of give that away thinking, there's nothing I can do about it. But there's a big range of things we can do about it. And you have to remember that, and maybe just think about examples from other people whenever you are in a situation. So that's why I love reading biographies of people. If you read any biography of anybody who's done anything worthwhile, whether it's in the business world, humanitarian world, any inspiring person, they've had overcome a bunch of rough stimuli in their life, and is watching their responses is really interesting. And so specifically back to real estate though, the things that I try to think about are, how can I minimize my losses? So going back to our story, those two people, the first situation where they had this contractor, we sort of penciled that deal. We looked at it again and said, all right, going forward, we have a few different choices. We could try to just sell this property as is. We could spend a little bit of money and try to fix it up and try to sell it that way. Or we could, just go ahead and borrow even more money, or come up with all the money, fix it up, and try to sell it for the full price. Like those are the options. We could also they could keep the property too. And so we just went through those options, A, B, C, D, trying to write them on a piece of paper. And then we looked at which one is most likely to lead to the minimal loss. Like every one of those is going to be a loss. Like it was not going to be a good situation, but which one minimized their financial loss, but also their time, energy, and effort. Like there's some that maybe they could have fixed it up and made it more money, but it was a little bit more risky. They were already kind of burned out on this deal. And so we worked out a plan where they kind of get the property a little bit cleaned up, but they proactively just called a bunch of other investors. And they said, hey, just make me an offer on this property. And they eventually got an offer, and it was less than what they owed on it, but they worked with the lender, and they came up with some cash themselves. And then the lender took a little bit of I think either took a loss, or it was a hard money lender, or I think maybe they just lent them the money, a little bit of the money to cover the loss, so they could just get the property paid off and moved on. So they still lost, right? But they were able to proactively get it done, and not have to just keep on dealing with that deal. And that's my second thing I wanted to share with you, is sometimes we get stuck that we have to make our money back the same way we lost it. And this is actually a quote from Warren Buffett. He's been there and done that too. He says, you don't have to make your money back the same way you lost it. Think about that. This bad deal that my students who were talking to me, it was really tempting to think, I got to stick with this deal and make it. And the decision we made was, no, let's just cut our losses. Like this deal has a lot of bad things going on. If you lose $20,000 on this deal, but you can go back and live to see another day, then you can try to make that money back somewhere else. Don't try to keep on pouring money into a bad deal. And in this case, it was a bad deal. And so one of the tactical things they did was actually borrow the loss. So if you have a $200,000 loan or $150,000 loan, whatever the number is, it's tempting to think, I'm just going to keep going with this loan and try to sell it or try to rent it. In their case, it was better for them to lose $20,000, and if they had some of the cash themselves, they had to borrow a little bit of it. So let's say they still owed $10,000. They can pay that $10,000 back over time. And it's a lot easier to make payments on $150,000 or a $200,000 loan on a vacant house or a rental that doesn't cash flow. So sometimes we have to do what Warren Buffett says, reminding ourselves, you don't have to make the money back on this deal. Just cut your losses, move on, separate this deal from the future, and then go make your money back somewhere else. Like free up your energy, free up your time, free up your capital to go do the next deal. And that was the general attitude we took of just, hey, these are the cards we're dealt. Make a list of ways we can respond, pick the one that minimizes the losses, and don't be afraid to swallow your pride. And maybe even, hopefully you don't have to borrow money or just you have to pay money at closing to lose the deal. But in that case, they did. And it was the best thing for them to do. The third lesson, this is one my business partner and I laughed about and have learned a lot because we've had a lot of scars to prove it, that we've had some deals we lost money on, others we barely got out. And we always called those seminars that, like a seminar you go to, you pay money to learn something at a class. We called these real world seminars where we had the scar, we made a mistake. And our goal was to always learn from those mistakes. Sometimes it's like a $500 mistake. Sometimes it's a $10,000 mistake. Sometimes people lose, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. The bigger the money you lose, I promise you, the more you're going to learn from that. But you got to learn. That's the takeaway. That's the seminar. That if you have the mistake, but then you just kind of stick your head in the sand and don't learn from it, then you've got nothing. You've got nothing of value from that loss, from that seminar you just took. So I say lick your wounds, because a lot of times we beat ourselves up and we're like, hey, how stupid am I to have lost money on a deal? How stupid am I to make that mistake and hire that contractor? Just lick your wounds. Every single person who's done anything worthwhile has made mistakes. You're not the first person. You're not going to be the last person. I've done it as well. Lick your wounds, pick yourself back up, call it a seminar, learn the lesson. Maybe you have to write it down. Maybe you have to start a podcast or a seminar like I have to share a bunch of the mistakes I've made. But step number 3, if you can lick your wounds, learn, and then move on, then you can turn this loss, what is a kind of really negative situation in the moment, into something that will help you. You'll get better. You won't do that same mistake, hopefully, again. You can tell other people about it, and then you'll be a wiser, more savvy investor because of those mistakes you made. So I hope those 3 ideas are helpful for you. I want to close the loop on these stories that I started this episode with. I told you about the first one. They ended up just selling the property to another investor. They went proactively and found other investors to make offers. The offer was less than what they owed, but they just got it figured out. They moved on. They're going to live to see another day financially. The second deal is ongoing. So I don't know exactly how it's going to end, but part of the process that he's trying to do to solve this deal is getting a variance with the local zoning board. So it's a multi-unit building. He's trying to get like one more unit available to maybe add some value to this deal. So he can build if he can remodel a 4-unit instead of a 3-unit, that'll at least kind of reduce the sting a little bit when he has to put all this money into it. There's not a guarantee that's going to happen. And there's some other zoning issues he's having to deal with, another seminar in terms of what the zoning is. And there's some grandfather rules in and things like that. A whole nother story I'll talk about. But the point I want to make about this is our conversation was, what are the options you have to do? And some of those options were, I can go to the zoning board and present my case the best way I can. I could talk to the local zoning officials. I can, try to increase the value. He's being proactive about that. And I don't know, who knows how it's going to go, but he is doing what he can with the cards he's been dealt. And then he's going to have to figure out a way to either minimize the loss, or maybe even make it back over time. Both of those cases, I think, are good examples, not of somebody making a bunch of profit. These are going to be losses likely, but people who respond to the reality of their investment deal and don't panic. They still figure out a way to make it happen. And I think 10 years from now, 20 years from now, those same people, and hopefully you too, will look back and say, that was actually a turning point in my investment career when I dealt with a really hard thing. And because I know I can deal with a hard thing, it's going to make a lot of the easy deals, the better deals, even easier going forward. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you had a deal that went bad? Let's make this like a sharing where we don't always prop up the best deals we have. We let other investors know that, hey, sometimes deals go bad. So let me know some details, some stories in the comments. I would love to hear from you on that. And if you're someone who wants help coaching, a community accountability from other small, mighty investors who also sometimes do bad deals, but also are encouraging each other to get through those bad deals, I have a community called Rental Property Mastery. That's where I spend a lot of my time. That's where these 2 one-on-one coaching calls happen. So if you want to get some one-on-one time with me, if you want to get accountability groups and feedback and courses on buying properties, financing them, manage them, I'd love for you to connect with me inside of Rental Property Mastery. We have a 300 member cap, and we're getting a little closer to that right now in 2025. You can see a link in the video or the podcast description below. It's coachcarson.com/RPM. I would love to see you inside the community. And if you like videos like this, where I give you some raw advice based on my history as a real estate investor over the last 22 years, I think you'll like my next video, which is 22 years of real estate investing advice in 46 minutes. It's where I give you my best ideas, the things that have really stuck with me, a lot of them from my mistakes that I've made, but also from some wins as well. So check that video out. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the thumbnail above me here. If you're listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube, you can also click on the video link in the podcast or YouTube description below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.